Okay, everyone, this is Misha Houston. Hello, and welcome to my channel. Tonight, we have our panel here tonight. Yeah, I hear the beep. We've just gone live. And I want to welcome Tony Umber and his lovely girlfriend, Sarah. Thank you for joining our stream tonight, guys. You want to do your intros?
Ladies first.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I don't. My name is Sarah. Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun. That's all I have.
Okay. Yes, I'm Misha Houston. If you want to check me out on Facebook under Misha Houston. You can check me out on this channel, the YouTube channel under Misha Houston, and you can also check me out on Instagram, Misha underscore Houston. Tonight I am doing John 3, the overview for the chapter John 3 of A Game of Thrones. Tony, you want to do your introduction?
Yeah, Tony Umber. Yeah, glad to be here again for another chapter breakdown. Glad to have Sarah here. Just another week, another chapter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a very interesting chapter for John. John has made it to Castle Black, and he's starting to realize how things are on the wall. It's he misses the warmth of Winterfell. He misses his family. He misses his father. He misses Uncle Benjen. He misses his brothers and his sisters, and he certainly misses Arya as well. He misses how good things were when they were at Winterfell. All he feels here is loneliness, solitude, and the chill of winter. None of that he felt when he was at Winterfell. The story begins on him practicing in the yard, and he's getting the lay of the land and of the people uh, that are that are supposed to be there. He has no friends. He just has a group of people around him, people that he's going to have to work with, but he feels no warmth or love towards. A few of those people are Darian, Darian. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name. I'm assuming it's Darian. And he only really judges them by their sword play. He says that Darian is quick, but he's fearful. Then there is Pip, who uses his sword like a dagger. There's another person named Jaren who seems very weak, and he sees Grin, who is slow and clumsy. We also hear other characters called Alistair Thorne. Alistair Thorne is the master at arms. He teaches all the new recruits how to work their sword and how to defend themselves against against enemies and against the cold. Alistair Thorne is a very hard, angry man, but he bleeds black. He's very much a part of the Night's Watch, and he has committed himself totally to this, and it really shows. But in doing so, Alistair Thorne has become cold and happyless and pitiless. He has no love for himself or anything or anyone else. So he's John is looking at these people, from the outside looking in, and he sees these people as cold and so different from what the life that he's used to living. John is the youngest of everyone there, and he's being mocked because of his high upbringing. He's a bastard, yes, but he was a bastard born to a high lord. He's grown up, around wealth all his life. He's he's never really went hungry for anything. He's always had a warm cloak. He's always, done well for himself, and he's had friends and everything else, that someone of his station would have. And because of that, a lot of people, mock him for it. They're very fearful of him. They don't know what to make of him. And as he's practicing his sword play in the yard, it becomes apparent that he's better than everyone else. And also, he's unnecessarily rough to some of the people in the yard. He breaks someone's wrist. He knocks someone down into the snow on his bottom. He's rough, and he pushes people around. He doesn't really see that he's bullying everyone else, but all he can see is that he's better than everyone else, and there's there's nothing to be done about it. He's above them. He knows that he's above them, but he doesn't really take the time to really acknowledge what that means to everyone else. Let's see what else. As I said before, he's very, very remorseful about being there. He's angry and he's cold, and he's starting to really understand what he once had before and what he gave away. He feels so abandoned here. As I said before, he doesn't have any friends. He he feels abandoned even by his own uncle. He, wanted to spend more time with his uncle. Apparently, 3 days after arriving at the wall, his uncle goes out on a great ranging. He wanted to go with him, but his uncle would not allow it. He's 14 years old now. And of course, in this story, he's seen as a man. But at 14, what wise and wonderful decisions could you make at that period? Um, he's starting to feel what he lost, and he's very remorseful of that. He complains that he hates it here and that it's so cold. And I don't think that he's talking so much about the weather, even though it is, very cold. I think he's talking about the lack of warmth. That's what he's really wanted all his life, that he's never really had. And he thought that he could have it at the wall, but he's really not getting it. He had a better time of it, when he was in Winterfell.
Was going to say he thought Catelyn was bad.
Yes.
Catelyn's all right at this point.
Yeah, and Catelyn, for all of her mistakes and all of her problems, was far better than Alistair Thorne ever was. It's just he's realized what a mistake he has made.
And don't you find out that Alistair Thorne, the whole reason he's at the wall is because he fought for the Targaryens, and then that's why he has that thing against Jon and Eddard.
Yes, but we don't really find it out in this chapter.
Right, yeah.
Later chapters, but that is the reason why he is there. He did fight against the Starks and sided with the Targaryens, and because of that, he was sent to the wall for life. So apparently, he just got on the wrong side, and he's at the wall now, and that's become his life. And I guess he's angry and bitter because of that. Let's see what else. He wonders. Go ahead, Tony.
No, I always thought it was funny how he took out on Jon, like calling him Lord Snow, and even though he's a bastard, like his standing. And Alistair Thorne is, from House Thorne. They have Blackwater Rush. It's a high lordship. Like, it's not like it's some tiny little keep somewhere. So it's like he grew up just as good, if not, maybe a little less. But he didn't go do winter with no cloak and the stuff they make fun of Jon for. I just think it's funny because like Alistair Thorne comes from a noble house. So, but it's always weird for me to feel like when he would take that out on Jon.
Oh yes, but I think it's not so much because that he is a bastard and he came from a high lord. I think it's because he just feels that the people relate more toward Jon than to Alistair Thorne. You understand what I'm saying? I've always noted and thought that the most fearsome people don't want anyone to really be afraid of them. The most fearsome people really want to be loved. And I think that Jon earned, a little bit of love from the people much faster than Alistair Thorne ever did. So I think there's a little twinge of jealousy there. So I think it's mainly what that is about, not so much his social standing, because legally he is, higher. Alistair Thorne, it was a lord, and John is just a bastard. But I think they care for John more because he brought the warmth that Alistair Thorne couldn't bring, you know. We got some people in the chat. Alicia. Hey, Alicia, thank you for stopping by. Septa Shayna Sapphires, thank you for stopping by. The one true David Adams, thank you for stopping. Ricky Hunt, thank you so much. A lot of gangbangers in here tonight. Cameo, I want to give a shout out to Cameo. Thank you, Cammy, for bringing so many people with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Now, back to the chapter, John 3, A Game of Thrones. Now, after the sword play, he goes to put, the weapons up in the armory. And he runs, into Donald Noy, a very interesting character that we're going to see throughout John's chapters. He was very much a high lord. I mean, pretty much a high lord. I'm not quite sure. Do you know exactly who Donald Noy was?
I do.
Yes.
He was the master at arms for the Baratheons.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And I do think one of my favorite things, you were talking before about how you see all this aggression from Alistair Thorne towards Jon Snow, and you don't really know where it's coming from, but then you find out later it's because he sided with the Targaryens. Knowing that Jon is secretly a Targaryen is one of my favorite
irony
things of this chapter. Yeah, ironies of this chapter is everything about it. So yeah, Donald Noy takes this fatherly role. Like I think they gave it to Tyrion in the show, where he's sort of giving him a reality check, a perspective check. I think so. So to go back to the whole irony foreshadowing thing, when they're in the yard, I think the everyone that Jon humiliated in the yard kind of gangs up on him. And one of the people, I think it was Toad, says, he's like, "Oh, you're a bastard born. Your mother was a whore. Maybe I had her once." It's not a direct quote, but, and then you just think of Lyanna and it's like, no, she wasn't a whore. That's not how it went. And he's like, Lord Eddard Stark didn't mess with low-born prostitutes. Anyway, so then they go to, like, Donald Noy breaks up the fight, and it's Donald Noy. He had a whole life before he came to the Wall. He forged Robert's warhammer that killed Rhaegar Targaryen. Like, going back and reading it, that's Jon's dad. This person who is taking such a fatherly role to him. And I'll stop talking about this in just a second, but one of my favorite things that Donald Noy says is, well, he's kind of telling Jon what he needs to hear, and Jon says, I'm sorry, he's telling Jon that he's being a bully, and he's like, what? They're bullies. They all came up on me and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, you're kind of being a spoiled brat right now. And Jon says, I didn't ever think. And he's like, well, you should think, or else you should start, what is it?
Sleeping with a dagger underneath.
Sleeping with a dagger. That's my favorite foreshadowing part too, because yeah, like Donald Noy dies defending the Wall, and there's no one around to tell him, like, you need to think about what your brothers think of you, or else they're going to kill you. And which is exactly what happens at the end of Dance with Dragons. Oops.
Oh, that's me. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll stop talking now. But yeah, that was I love Donald Noy in this chapter for all of the reasons that I was carrying on about.
Oh yes, and this is the point. This is the time where you give your opinion, so you're not doing anything wrong. Okay. Yes, Donald Noy, has a very rich backstory. He was the blacksmith at Castle Black, and Jon envies him a little bit, because he's had this rich, full life before he went off into the Wall. And this is what they were talking about in the previous Jon chapter before he came to the Wall. They were saying, maybe you should go out and live your life first and then decide to withdraw from it. And that is something that John did not do. He had his mind set on going off to be at the wall. He just wanted it so much, like a child. That's what happens when you give a child, such a huge decision to make, because they're not thinking enough. They haven't matured enough. They haven't been in the world enough to know what they're giving up. I mean, you should know the world first before you give up on it. And that's something that John did not do at all. Yes, Donald Noy, just was telling him that you were bullying him. It's not so much that you were better than them. It was the fact that you were rubbing it in their face that you were better than them, and you should think more. You should think more. And you were unnecessarily rough to them. I mean, and he was unnecessarily rough. He broke someone's wrist, and for what? Why did he break their wrist? Why did he go so far out into showing that he was better than them, and he was just very unnecessarily rough to them when he didn't have to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of in the beginning was, he thought, the quicker he could show that he was, worthy enough to do, because like when he asked Benjamin, or he wants to go out with him on the ranging, he just gets there and wants to go out on ranging, then Ben's like, you gotta earn your keep here. Like, there's nothing's given to you because you're the son of a lord.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like every man here earns their way. And it's like almost like he's trying to take the fast track, to earning his place by this, showing that he can beat a bunch of, because most of these other people are in there for poaching, raping, stealing. So they're not warriors. They're not castle trained. You know what I mean? So it's like it's like kicking a three-legged dog. Like, you're not really showing anything by doing that, and it was just your overkill.
Yes, he did. He was very unnecessarily rough to those people, and I couldn't really blame them. You broke a man's wrist, and for what? This is just practice. I mean, he said it plainly. If there was an edge to your sword, you would have killed all of them. So what exactly were you trying to achieve in this moment? What exactly are you trying to do? What are you trying to prove? And it was obvious that he was trying to prove something. And he asks a question about himself. He starts to question himself a little bit. He asks, what was he becoming? He would see horrible images in his mind. He saw in his mind's eye that Benjamin Stark was lying dead, his blood red on the snow. The thought made him sick. What was he becoming? And that's a very good question that all of our characters could ask themselves. What am I becoming, in this new place? I was one person in one place, but what am I here? And that's certainly a good question for all of our characters to ask themselves, because it seems to me that all of our characters became different people once they went in different places. The only person that didn't change was Eddard Stark. And by the time it was over, he lost his head. So it's a really go ahead.
Yeah, I was talking to Sarah about it earlier about with John, how like him and Sansa kind of mirror each other with the way their outlook on life before they get like a real taste of it, and like how he thinks going to the walls is like noble thing, and he's gonna be up there with all these hardened soldiers and knights, and he's gonna be fighting wildlings beyond the wall. And you get like Sansa, how she thinks, going south to King's Landing is going to be nothing but tourneys and feast and meeting these, lordly knights that are, all gallant, and they get a real quick dose of reality when they get to the two places they're going. And it's funny because they probably have the most distant relationship of all the siblings, but they like mirror each other in that the way of how naive they are about the world.
Oh yeah, because they haven't been in the world.
Right.
All they've known was Winterfell when things were good. But everyone's about to get a rude awakening.
And I think it's funny too, like just Winterfell itself, how it the living in the north, especially in the wintertime, is rough. But like even being in Winterfell is like they have it a step above, not just because it's like a castle there, but it has the hot springs that run through the castle, so it gives it like a warmth where all these other castles they don't, not that we know of, have the same feature. So like even though you're in the north, like Winterfell is like a step above the rest of the north because you got at least some kind of heating element.
Yes.
And
I mean, yeah. I mean, they had pretty much a heater. That's what is that what you're trying
right.
to say, to guard off against the winter. With the hot springs running through the walls. But apparently, there's nothing here. There's nothing of that at the castle.
Mm-mm.
Uh, and I also want to go a little bit into the wall and the castle itself and John's arrival. He talks a little bit about the arrival, seeing the wall for the first time and his thoughts upon it. He says that, what is this? Okay. Yeah, he says that this is the end of the world. This is the end of the world. I mean, he's realizing how huge and immense this place is. It gives him a bit of a quietness in him, and it also quiets Tyrion as well for him seeing the wall at the first time. The wall and Castle Black itself. They talk a little bit about the Night's Watch, about how grand it used to be, and it used to be a grand place. There's so much room now at Castle Black, so pretty much anyone can sleep wherever they want to. But it wasn't always so. Castle Black can house 5,000 men in arms, and it's a big enough castle to house so many people. But there's only a tenth of the number now, so there's maybe only 500 men now at the wall now. So it really shows how dilapidated and 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 bad excuse me, and how bad things have become. It used to be a noble order, and there used to be 19. There were 19 castles on the wall, and every castle used to be manned, and now there are only three, and even those three castles are undermanned. So I mean, the wall used to be this grand order, but it's not that way now.
Yeah,
It's something ground.
they
Go
have
ahead.
I can't remember exactly where it's at, but they talk about I think it's like the one of the halls, and I think it might be like towards more when John's about to become Lord Commander. I'm not sure, but somebody in the chat probably tell me, Alicia or somebody, but it talks about how like I think it's when the certain knights that are in the Night's Watch, they have like I don't know if it's when they die or when they can't. I think it is when they die. They're like shield that has like their house logo, whatever, used to get put up on the wall, and like you see the last one that was put up like that was like so long ago, and
Mhm.
I think it might have been in I'm not sure. It could have been the one that Sam was in the night fort and he goes through the weirwood mouth thing to go through the wall. It
Mhm.
was in some part of the book they talk about how they used to put like the shields up on the wall of the dining hall.
Mhm.
I can't remember exactly where it's at. If somebody knows, I'd really like to be told.
Was
But
it the chapter where John gets stabbed? I feel like they're in the Great Hall with all the.
it could have been. I don't know exactly.
Yeah,
I just remember seeing it.
that kind of does sound like that last chapter, like John's last chapter. Yeah. I could be wrong, but I would have to go over that and check it out later. What else about the wall? Oh, Tyrion. Tyrion himself. Tyrion, is a guest at the wall. And he wanted to see the wall for himself. He wanted to split off, from his family for a while and visit the wall. And this is kind of what I was talking about and what Sarah was talking about. A person who wants to experience the world. Tyrion is a perfect example of that. Before he retires, he has a hugely adventurous path in this first book. He does it all in this book. He's everywhere. He's from King's Landing to Winterfell to the Wall, back to King's Landing, at the crossroads, then the Vale, then he's at the Green Fork, and then he's right on back, to King's Landing. He has a hugely adventurous life, and he wants to experience the world first before he retires and withdraws himself from it. And he continues on that path the whole time. And that is what Benjen and Ned Stark were talking about to Jon. You need to experience your life first before you withdraw from it. And that is what Tyrion is doing. And it is what Jon failed to see up until now.
You see, with Tyrion, how he always remarks about how he hated how his dad wouldn't let him take that Lannister rite of passage when he became, I think, like 16, and they would go to like the free cities or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like all the Lannisters got to do it, but he wouldn't let him because he thought he was going to bring a bad name. I mean, bring scorn on their name or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty neat that now you see that he can make his own way and do what he wants, how he does all this traveling. It's like I'm just making up for that.
Well, yeah, he's very enterprising. He's not afraid of the world. He's not afraid to be in the world, and I appreciate that. I appreciate a person that's not afraid to go outside. So can't stay cooped up all the time. Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm sorry. I don't know what good etiquette here. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
No, just jump on in. That's
so. To what Tony was saying about how Tyrion wasn't allowed to go on. I might have a child situation here.
No, that's okay.
Tyrion was going to bring shame to the house. That's why he wasn't allowed to travel to free cities, because he was ashamed. He was grotesque. I think it shows what hard times the Wall has met. It's where they're talking about the Queen's own brother is here, and he gets to sit with Lord Commander, and he and Jon are like buddies because they're both highborn. Yeah, thanks. I like that Tyrion also is. Jon thinks several times. Tyrion's the only one who told him the truth. He says, "My dad, thinking Ned Stark, didn't tell him the truth about the Wall. Benjen didn't tell him the truth about the Wall. Tyrion told him the truth about the Wall."
Yes.
So Donald Noy and Tyrion both sort of schooled Jon.
Yes, but they kind of schooled him a little too late.
Too late.
but let me say this about Jon. He wouldn't have listened even if they did, tell him sooner. He was determined. He had it in his head that he wanted to go to the Wall. He felt like he had no place in this world, but he just wanted to. He felt like he'd fit in and be better off at the Wall. But come to find out that he was wrong, and that's the way of a 14-year-old. They're 14 and they haven't matured, and they don't see everything. They only see, their own desires and their own impetuousness. And that's kind of what happened with Jon, and he seriously and totally regrets being there. Tyrion said something wonderful in this. He said,
my favorite Tyrion quote, one of the best Tyrion quotes is in this, and they put it in the show too. I think it's going to be the one you said.
Mm-hmm. If they want to give you a name, take it and make it your own, and then they can't hurt you with it anymore. It's something that I think it's a wonderful quote, and I wish I had known about this quote when I was growing up, because I was called names as well because of my size, and I wish that I had someone to tell me that, but there was no advice. A little bit of personal history for me, but just a little. But I think it was a wonderful quote. Is that the quote that you were talking about? Yes, Sarah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's on T-shirts. It's like wear it like a badge of honor so it can never be used against you or something. Like, I'm butchering it, I'm sure, but yeah, the idea of if you know people, if you know your weakness, flaunt it like it doesn't bother you, and no one can use it against you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are going to talk bad about you all your life, no matter who you are. So don't let, other people's words and their hatred and their fear of you bring you down. And that's pretty much all Tyrion was saying, because he understands it. He's a dwarf, and the world is taller than him, and sometimes he's beat up because of it. Sometimes he's feared because of it, and he's pretty much saying to John, yes, you're a bastard, but don't let it bring you down. And I think that's a wonderful piece of advice that he's given him.
He gives Bran similar advice, if memory serves. Is it crippled bastards and broken things?
Yeah.
I like that Tyrion ties so many Stark siblings together. I mean, he's never really in a chapter with Arya, but he interacts with
Sansa and Jon and Bran.
Yeah, he was married to Sansa. He met with Robb after on his way home from the Wall, and Robb had his sword across his lap, like in a threatening way. And Catelyn rested him. Tyrion is really embedded with the Starks. Everyone but Arya. Was this just in the show? I can't remember. Did he give a saddle? Was that in the book? I can't remember.
I'm not sure whether it's the Bran chapter or Tyrion's upcoming chapter, but he did give Bran a special saddle, because of his broken legs.
That's how when they come across Osha in the woods, because he rides off too far.
Right. Bran rode off in the woods in his chapter. And then Tyrion came back to Winterfell in his chapter, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and gave him the special saddle. His legs aren't so much different from Bran's. They're small and broken. So Tyrion has to have a special saddle. And Bran also had a special saddle too. And it was a lovely gift to give him. It really was. It gave hope to Bran, that even though he was a cripple, he could still be a warrior, a horseback warrior, and a horseback archer if he wanted to, just like the Dothraki. What else? After that quote, Jon and Tyrion go off to the Great Hall to have mutton stew. There were the other people in the hall as well, eating dinner or lunch or breakfast. I'm not quite sure what it was. But there are other people in the hallway, and he distances himself from the people in the hallway, in the people in the yard that he bullied. They were about to have stew and eat their food when Alliser Thorne gives them a call and tells him to go to the Lord Commander's chambers. There we meet Jeor Mormont. Jeor Mormont is of the north. He's a Mormont of the Mormont family, which is very interesting. Jeor Mormont and Jorah Mormont. And when I first read that, I didn't really get the connection, but it only came to me later that they were father and son, Jeor and Jorah. So, I mean, the north is pretty much everywhere, even in the Dothraki plains. So I have to give credit for that. Jeor Mormont is the Lord Commander. He's like 50 or 60 years old. He's an old gray beard, and he has given his life to the Night's Watch. And he treats Jon, very well. Maybe even a little too well, if I'm honest. Much better than some of the other people. I think he automatically has a natural respect for him. And go ahead, Sarah.
I was gonna say, I think he has a respect for him as a warrior and as someone who's smart, but also, I mean, if memory serves, Lord Commander Mormont took the black so that Jorah could rule when he was young, like young and in his prime. So he's somebody who chose the black so that Jorah could lead House Mormont, and then Jorah brought such shame to their family. He's kind of looking for a son to a certain extent. There's all the people that are sort of like all of Jon's father figures are sort of in this episode. Listen to me, chapter. Donal Noy, Tyrion, and Jeor.
Jeor Mormont. Yeah, that's true. That's actually true. We have a question from Tammy. She asked, what will Jon and Dany name their daughter? As far as the show goes, I think he may name that baby Lyanna if it's a girl, or maybe Edward if it's a boy. And I'm leaning toward the Stark names over the Targaryens.
He's gonna name her Catelyn.
Maybe. What do you think their names will be, Sarah? Unmute your microphone.
This is, yeah, no, I had nothing to say. This is if Danny, what is Danny? I'm still getting over the fact that John's name is Aegon.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like that would be a proper name for Jon. Jon Snow is a good name.
Jon Snow is a great name, and you get the first foreshadowing of Lord Snow. Like that's like this pejorative term in this chapter, but like in book 5, he's Lord Snow. That's what people call him, and they're not trying to be ironic. They're trying to be respectful.
Well, I mean, to me, I just think Jon Snow is a very, appropriate name for Jon. It's very hard and blunt and to the point, which is a characteristic of all of the northern names, like Bolton, Dustin, and I read that somewhere in the A World of Ice and Fire, but I just think because of his nature, his no BS approach, I think Jon Snow is a good name for him.
Jon Snow is to the point, and I have an 8-year-old, and I will occasionally let her watch certain scenes. And I was talking to her about Ghost, and she was like, well, why is his name Ghost? And I was like, well, because he's all white. And she's like, well, then why didn't they name him Snow? And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't love you more than I do right now. Yeah, like Jon Snow, Ghost, like it all fits.
Yeah, and another thing, they said something in the show about that Jon didn't want another bastard out there named Snow. That's why he didn't sleep with the prostitute. Roz, what's her name? Roz? Yeah, Roz. That's why I didn't sleep with the prostitute when she was given to me, because I just can't bear someone else out there named Snow. So I think that's probably why he didn't name Ghost Snow after him. I think do we have another question? Oh no, it's for someone else, not for us. Okay, George Mormont. George Mormont gave him the letter. He asked him, you can read, right? And he said yes. He grabbed the letter and he read the part where Bran wakes up. He woke up and he doesn't really care, too much that he's a cripple. All that matters to him is that his brother is still alive, which is wonderful, I mean, and that's a blessing in and of itself, because Bran did not have to live. He did not have to live. And I hate that he can't walk now, but he is still alive and he's still amongst the living. And he's going to have a very pivotal role to play later on, even without his legs. So for that, I'm fully on board with Jon, and his happiness that his brother is still alive, because Bran didn't have to live. He didn't have to live. And the best part of the episode of the chapter, excuse me, I'm making a mistake too.
I did the same thing.
I make mistakes a lot, but it's just how I am. Oh, I want to give a shout out to Felicia. Thank you, Felicia, for joining us. Thank you, Ricky Punch, for joining us as well, and thank you, Leslie. A person named Leslie is also here as well. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a live chat tonight. So Jon comes into the room and he is filled with joy and relief. He is filled with it. And he tells the guards, he tells anyone who would listen, that his brother is still alive. Bran is alive. Bran woke up. He hugs Tyrion. He picks him up in his arms and holds him.
Emo Jon is so emotional.
Oh yes, it feels like, the waterfall is falling, like the dam has broken free and the waterfall is flowing. And there's so much emotion and so much relief. And it's such a wonderful moment. And he's telling everyone, he picks up Tyrion in his arms and holds him and hugs him and swings him around as if he were a girl. And Tyrion, there's one little sentence though before I go back to John. Tyrion grabs his arm and says, I'm so sorry. Now, Tyrion knows what's been happened to Bran. He knows what's been happened to Bran. He knows about the incest. He knows about Jamie and Cersei and what Jamie did. He knows it all, but he never tells him. He never tells him, but he knows it. And he puts his hand on his arm and he says, I'm so sorry. But John doesn't pick up on it. He doesn't pick up on the guilt of that touch, you know. There's a little bit of guilt in Tyrion, but he doesn't pick up on it. All he knows is that his brother is still alive. And his joy and his enthusiasm, becomes infectious. He goes to hug the people that he hurt in the practice yard. He goes to hug, which one was it? I don't know whether it's a Darian or Pip or Jaren or Grin, but he goes to hug one of them, and the guy just says, "Hold on, wait a minute." But the man in the yard does feel his happiness, and John apologizes to him. And yes, go ahead, Sarah.
I was gonna say, I think he brings an element of family in that moment, because none of the people, John went by choice. John left a giant family by choice. No one else went there by choice. No one else left a warm, loving family by choice. So all of this emotion John is showing and picking up and hugging everyone, I mean, I think that is a very disarming moment for him. And I don't know, I really like this chapter a lot, because you kind of grow up with him.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely right. That's a very good point, and I didn't even see that. This is more like a prison colony, not something that you go to by choice. Someone, that has no place in their family. So, the ninth-born sons, the thieves, the rapers. This is a dumping ground. That's pretty much all it's become, not the noble order that it once was. So this is more of a punishment for most people. And maybe it could be argument that this can maybe be a self-punishment for John. He felt unloved with the Starks, even though that was his home and he was better off there. So maybe he kind of chose to punish himself just a little bit by going off into the Night's Watch. Yes, he hugs everyone and he brings a sense of family. And the people that, to people that may have never known love in their life. And it is very infectious, and it goes all across the room. It goes all the way to the cooks. It goes to the people at the tables, the guards, everywhere. It just fills up the room.
They're like, we don't know why we're happy, but we're happy. The guy who could beat us up and kill us all is happy, so we're going to be happy.
Yeah, it's a very, a moment that everyone needed. Everyone needed a little bit of warmth at the wall. He said that in his chapter that this place had no warmth. It was plenty cold here, but it was no warmth. And I think it's the warmth that everyone really, really needed. And it goes to everyone in the room, and Tyrion is laughing, and then everyone is laughing. And the only person that's not laughing is Alistair Thorne. Alistair Thorne is angry. He is so angry. And to me, as I said before we went live, I think he's just jealous of John. I think he is jealous of John that he managed to bring some warmth and some companionship and friendship, to this place, and he never could himself. Tony, what do you think about that moment?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a lot easier for Alistair Thorne to be the dick he was, and everybody be scared of him. Because it makes it a lot easier for him. And if all these other people see somebody like John, John can, fight because he's castle trained and all that. But like when they see, this so-called bastard stand up to big, bad, scary Sir Alistair, it's going to, drive more people to do the same. Mm-hmm. And even if they don't have that like personal, the balls to do it for themselves, they're going to come together as like a team effort. This is what he's probably thinking. So he wants to stop that and cut it off. You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially the way John he stands up to him like that. Just Alistair doesn't want that because he's gotten by for long as he has by being the way he is. It's a lot easier to make people fear you than love you.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, I think there was a book written by Machiavelli called The Prince, and he
Mm-hmm.
asked, what's better, to be feared or to be loved?" So that's very much going to be, a contradictory point for the two of them. He, Alistair Thorne has chosen the fear route, while John has chosen the love route, and that's a very common theme in our, entire story. Some people are going by way of love, like Sansa, like Eddard, but the Lannisters are going by fear, such as Joffrey and Tywin and Cersei. What's the better path? Fear or
They
love?
both have their negatives of people trying to screw you either way. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like with the Danny thing, how some it was the prophecy thing she had, the one by love, one by what was the I forget what they are, but it's the same thing. Like if you got people fearing you, you're eventually gonna have somebody that's gonna test you, and then it's like with love, you let too many people in, they're going to end up betraying you. So both of them have their negatives to them. I don't think one outweighs the other when it comes to what negative can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it is true, like you said, like the people take these different routes, and we always tie like the Starks and Ned, for example, like with the honorable route, and you see how good that did him. And then you got the Lannisters that, like you just said, they go the whole different, intrigue route, and even that ends up biting them in the ass in the end.
I mean, Cersei even told Sansa this in the was it the Clash of Kings or the Storm of Swords? I can't remember which book she said it in. I think it was in Clash, and she said that love is a disease and it can kill you all the same. So she has chosen the fear route over love. But in a Dance of Dragons, she tells the High Septon that I have no one to love me. A woman needs to be loved. She's chosen the fear route, but there's a deep part within Cersei that needs love. And that's what I said, earlier about, fearsome people. People that are fearsome and angry, they most likely just want to be loved. I mean, they even showed that a little bit in Ramsay in the show. As he was standing over Miranda's corpse, he said that she was a fearless person. She didn't fear me, she didn't fear anyone. And that's what he wanted and cherished the most about her, because she was not afraid of him. So I mean, it's a really interesting dynamic. I mean, if being a feared versus loved, which route is the safest, especially in this story. Especially in this story, because the people that are choosing the love route are losing their heads, like Eddard Stark did. So it's a very interesting question that they bring up here, a very interesting chapter. John has chosen the love route, and it's in direct contradiction to what Alistair Thorne has chosen. So they're obviously going to be at odds with each other. I mean, they said it at the end of the chapter that you did the wrong thing. What did he say at the end of that chapter? I'm trying to get to it now. Yes, that was a grievous error, Lord Snow. And I think the error that he is talking about, I think it's the love route. You've chosen the love route, and that's a grievous error. He said in the last in the acetones of an enemy. So you know that Alistair is going to be an enemy just like he was in the show, and it's they're going to be at odds with each other. So that's pretty much the end of my overview. Now, normally I would like to talk a little bit about the show. Leave the books for now and then talk a little bit about the show and what happened in the show. And it really wasn't that much difference. It wasn't that much difference. Alistair Thorne was still, a douchebag, and he teased him and poked at him and you know, poked at him and, you know, and messed with him. But you know, toward, you know, the battle of the the battle of the wall, battle of Castle Black, there was a little bit more of a respect in Alistair Thorne than there was a little bit, you know, in the book. You know, he kind of acknowledged John there a little bit.
I would say in the show he does acknowledge John.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's at a different place. Isn't he in a different place at the time of the when the wildlings attack? One of the things that bugs me is that he in the books, I'm sorry, we're supposed to leave the books alone, but he's like more slight of frame, because I love that image. I can't remember which book, maybe it's Dance with Dragons, I'm sorry, but like John grabs him by the neck and lifts him up. He like shows his Targaryen rage. And like I just don't see Kit Harington lifting show Alistair Thorne up by the neck. I mean, he does get to hang him, but
hey, there you go.
Hey, party people, I'm sorry I fell asleep.
No,
morning.
Exactly. Good morning, y'all. Sorry.
Hey.
Hey, good to see everybody.
Hey, hon, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I see now you understand what I go through sometimes. I be forgetting about the stream and the sleep takes me over.
I didn't even forget. I was real fired up. I just fell asleep about, I don't even know what time it was. I put a movie on and fell out, you know?
Mm-hmm. We're talking about John.
Which chapter is this, John? Chapter 3?
Yeah, the 3rd John chapter.
All right, just a second, y'all. I mean, I literally just woke up and was like, oh, shit, it's 9:47. So I have to use the restroom and everything, but I'll be back with y'all.
Okay, go ahead. Now, as far as the show goes, you said that they were in a different place. Turn your microphone on.
Thanks. Sorry, guys. The way Alistair, he was a boss in the show. Like, oh, I can't remember what he says. Like, the wall is stood for 1,000 years. It's not going to fall tonight. Like, you hate him up until that moment where you realize he's a good leader in the show.
Yeah.
In the books, I never remember thinking, oh, yeah, he's a bitch, but he's a good leader. Like, he's just a dick in the books. Like,
yeah, you're absolutely right, Sarah. He was a boss in the show. He
hates John for being a Stark, but he's also like a Targaryen, which is the reason why Alistair Thorne is at the wall. So it's just
No, I didn't say you.
Oh, that's okay. Don't freak out. That's Russell in the background.
Big rat.
Hey, Russell.
Bullshit.
Yeah, what's up?
Oh, what's his face? When they attack on the wall, we're talking about the show, right?
Yeah.
I'm skipping ahead, but who was the guy? He got sent to the wall. He was like he was the heir to Harrenhal briefly. He was Lord of the Gold. He was the Gold Cloak guy.
Oh, Judge.
Janos Slint.
Slint.
In the show, they show him. This is I don't mean to be a show hater, but like this is sort of back when like the show sort of like paid homage to the books, and it's like, you know, Janos Slint is sort of like a coward, and then he runs into the cellar with Gilly. Like, I don't think that ever happens in the books, but in the show they do such a nice job of like painting a picture of all these characters that you sort of like and believe. In that season anyway.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. In the show, when it came down to the battle, I was totally with him. He led that place. He owned it. I was so proud of him. It was actually one of his best moments. And there was a part of me, you know, that hated seeing him hung in the show, because he really did have, you know, some worth and some substance to his character in the show. A little bit more than he had, you know, in the books. He was fabulous in the show.
He cries. He's like, I'm afraid. I'm just so afraid. And then John like thinks for a second, and then he's like,
Okay, where are we at, you guys?
We were talking.
I couldn't agree more. When I first started watching the series, and I'm disappointed in a lot of series, you know, but when I started watching Game of Thrones, I was like, shit, this is what I imagined in my life, in my head coming to life.
In the beginning, it was,
with the exception of getting past season 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say good night to Alicia Kingston. Thank you so much, Alicia, for joining us in the chat. Thank you so much, and good night, sweetheart.
Good night.
Later, sis. Later.
Bye, Alicia.
I'm so sorry, y'all. You know, I had missed one. And I know y'all were thinking, what the H? Or at least you were, Misha.
Yeah, we was wondering, but it's okay. We're still up here, and you got here. It's all good.
I'm so sorry.
We're talking about the chapter and the show now.
Right.
What's your take on the books? We can make a little bit of time for you, Jennifer. What was your take on the books? What was your standout parts in the book?
I'm caught with kid without my homework. I meant to go read the book this afternoon and do something else, and I tell you what I ended up doing was taking a damn nap.
Going to sleep.
But I tell you what, my standout part for this part in the book is when he gets to the wall. And this is just off the seat of my pants here, because I hadn't read it. I usually do reread. And he's not really bullying, but he likes it to be known that he's a little bit better skilled than everybody else. And then Tyrion gives him some real good advice, like, hey man, look, I get to leave in a few days, but you got to live with these months for, the rest of your life. I think it'd be a good idea to try to make some friends. And then one day, Alistair Thorne is just ruthless. So I believe it is Grin. I mean, really embarrasses him and everything.
Yeah.
And instead of John getting in on the joke, he tells him, he says, look, from now on, before we have sword practice and after, let's get together and I'll help everybody who, at least enough where you can protect yourself. So that's my standout in the chapters, that you can already tell what kind of person he's going to be, has been, and is going to continue to be, by the fact that he, doesn't want to be the shining star with no heart at the wall, but not necessarily the shining star pupil, but the person known as who's good and who has a heart. And even though that doesn't win him all this friends from the, Bowen Marsh, Alistair Thorne, it doesn't win him a lot of friends from those type people who hold the hierarchy, even at the wall, to be supreme. It does make him friends with his new recruits. And in essence, that's really his peers of tomorrow.
His peers of tomorrow.
Him with them.
I was gonna say his peers of tomorrow that he sends away, and then all those elder statesmen are the ones who stab him at the end.
Yeah, he made some mistakes. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. John lets his heart get in the way of his head.
Yeah.
I think even more so than Ned. I don't think Ned's head was quite as keen as John's, but John definitely lets his heart get away in his head, and he thinks that other people have the capacity for forgiveness that he does, and they don't.
Ned was older when he got killed. Ned at least lasted a little longer than John did.
Well, that is true. That is true. You're right, girl. You look really cute tonight, girl. Shit, you look good. Your teeth look good. Your complexion looks good. You're looking good.
Thank you. Thank you. Very kind.
Thank you. I've given up on being beautiful. If I just look neat and clean, I'm there. And that's why my hair looks askew, everybody. I literally just got off that couch right there. I swear to God. And I looked at the phone. I was almost going to yell at Russell Wolverton, but it's not his job to get me up at 9 o'clock. You know what I mean? So couldn't say nothing to him. Only thing that's killing me is I woke up out of ciggies. I'm out of cigarettes. Y'all, none of y'all smoke, do y'all?
On occasion, I have.
Yeah,
Well, don't
I'm
start.
in the
You'll
process
vape.
of quitting.
Tony doesn't smoke.
Not anymore.
Hell, it's harder to quit than smoking weed.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I was on the patch.
I'm not going to say harder than crack. I'm not going to put that there. But I will say weed. It's harder than quit smoking weed. I think you have a whole hand-mouth oral fixation that comes into it.
Oh, hold on.
Tony, you tell us you're the expert, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have so much the hand to mouth thing. I mean, it's me. I guess it's like because you have such a ritual with smoking cigarettes. Like it's after you eat, when you wake up.
It's just like a super bad habit.
Yeah, so it's like it goes hand in hand with so many things. So
like you're not waking up worrying about getting your heroin. You're worried about waking up about getting up your heroin and your first cigarette.
Excuse me. So yeah, we are talking about weed and smoking and Game of Thrones here.
Oh my God.
Cigarettes and heroin and weed here.
Yeah.
After sex.
I'm trying to delete my emails, y'all. I got so many in the trash can, like almost 200.
They say you need to keep them deleted or it'll mess up some of your it'll mess up. Oh, hey, Septushana Sapphires, Cammy. Hey, ladies. Good to see y'all. Let me see. Damn it, my phone messed up. Ricky Hunt, how you doing, buddy? Sarah Charles, that's you, Sarah, right?
That is correct, yes.
Hey, girl.
Hey.
If you have any questions in the chat, please put them in now. We moved on to the questions. So,
hey, Alicia, though I know she headed out, but hey, she's been popping in real regular lately, and that's good. Felicia came in. Hey, Felicia. I guess hey and bye would be the appropriate way. But I do that too. I popped in a chat Kyle had earlier, and I just said, hey, just showing some love. Shit, this was yesterday. Shit, I got to go mop. And I really did. I had to sweep and mop my house. Not every drug, Cammy.
Okay. Yeah, that's better. Okay, yeah, we're chatting about everything. And if there have any questions, please put them in the chat now. This is the time, okay? We're talking about Jon Snow, book and show.
You know what, Misha, I have a question.
Yes.
You said something I never thought of when we were talking about Bran being on horseback and how he could maybe shoot arrows on horseback like the Dothraki. In this chapter, I think Alistair Thorne does say to them, I hope the others have arrows because all that you guys are useful for is being like fodder for the others. Like 2 points. One is that the others are just sort of like snarks and grumpkins. They're not really a serious threat. They're like the boogeyman's going to get you. But also, two is what are arrows going to have to do with it? Like I don't know. I go back to Game of Thrones and the book, the first book, and I like mine it for clues about what's going to happen later on. And I would never pay attention to like, oh, the others better have arrows, but it was just a thought, like dragon glass arrows, like maybe it'll, I don't know. Just throwing that out there as a potential discussion.
And I wonder if the others have those werewood arrows, like they say Lord Bloodraven had, which are somehow more potentially fatal than just the regular old arrow. That was
Yeah.
Blood Raven's golden teeth, or whatever they were called. That
Raven's
was
teeth.
Raven's teeth. That was just his company of archers, and they had weirwood arrows.
Well, they had in Aegon's conquest that the king who knelt, Torrance Stark's bastard brother, thought about trying to sneak into the camp and shoot the dragons with weirwood arrows.
So weirwood arrows must do something to dragons.
I don't know. Maybe they think just because they're holy or whatever. Who knows? I don't know if somebody down the line shot one with a weirwood arrow or not. I guess anything's possible.
I think you'd have to get it in a particular spot. Under the belly, in the eye. You know what I'm saying? I think you'd have to be particular. Or maybe they just penetrate, whereas other arrows don't penetrate those scales.
So there's a question, Shayna Septa, Shayna Sapphires. Why doesn't GR manage Thorn better? Journey to seminar and leadership.
Well, let me answer that. I mean, he said in the books, and I agree with him, that I didn't hire him because of his personality. I needed him, to train these boys into men of the Night's Watch. So I do understand that aspect. I think Thorn, is a good enough teacher, even though he has a little bit of, leadership problems in him. But I think he's a good enough master at arms. I don't think he would be a good, Lord Commander.
I agree, Misha. I think John was just trying to put him where he would cause the least amount of trouble. And it had been kind of, if you will, almost living legend that Alistair Thone was a dick. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, everybody kind of like basic. If you can get through Lord Alistair Thorne, it almost gets easier for you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think maybe that was a very strategic move on John's end, putting him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good enough master at arms. He does what he's supposed to do, even though, he's very mean about it. But he's doing what he's supposed to, and I can't begrudge him for that. He does need to get those boys in line. And there was another point that I can't believe that I forgot. Tyrion brings up the Grumpkins and the Snarks. And he says they must be hungry this year. And apparently they are. Tyrion didn't know how right he was when he said that.
Yeah, I think he's like, a few of your brothers went missing. Like Benjen went ranging for Waymar Royce, and everyone who goes to look for them goes missing. The Grumpkins and the Snarks are hungry this year. And it's like, this whole chapter is just like...
Right. In fact, that old corpse that made it back before he had completely turned, and John put him in the freezer or in the black cells at the Castle Black, and then he attacked Jeor Mormont, and John's skin got burned, pretty badly, and then Jeor gave him the sword, the famous sword. So yeah.
So yeah,
they didn't take it too serious, but then when their best rangers and people started disappearing, Jeor for sure knew some shit was up. Or he would have never left Castle Black to go on that ranging. Never. And not taking his greatest force with him,
Oh yeah, the White Walkers. Oh man. The White Walkers. I am so interested in them, and I can't wait to see what they do. In the books.
Q&A. Excuse me, Misha. This is a good question. Cammy says Q&A. Is Viserion an ice dragon or a white? I'm gonna go with ice dragon. Well, no, actually, I'm gonna go with white, because if you've ever read George R. R. Martin's little book Ice Dragon, they have feelings. And the Viserion now just seems like under the Night King's control. He doesn't seem to still have any of his former self, if you will, left. So I'm going to say white.
See, before they came, the showrunners came out and said that it was blue fire. Like, I was really believing that what he was when he was bringing down the wall, it was like a blue, like just like an energy. You know how like the White Walkers, they have the blue eyes, and the whites the blue eyes, like it's some kind of whatever their great other. Because it was weird how the wall came down. It like came off in chunks. It wasn't like it was super melting down, like almost like a concussive like blast. But then they came out and said how I guess it was blue fire, and of course, I mean, there's blue fire too. And I think like if I'm not sure, go back to science days that in school, whenever like the more oxygen the flame has, the hotter it is, or bluer it is, whatever the hell it is. But yeah, I really thought it was like just some kind of like concussive blast coming out of them, because I'm like thinking, these are ice beings. Why they have fire? But then if you think too, sometimes when you freeze something, like you ever get hit one of them like cans that you dust off computers with, and like the whatever the hell the shit that comes out of it, it like burns your hand, it freezes. It's so cold it burns. So I guess it really, I guess it would make sense that it is fire. I don't know. Like some stuff goes against such logic and you got to think back that it's a fantasy show. Because like even if you look at the dragon, shouldn't even be flying to begin with. He's got so many damn holes in his wings. So it's like you can't put logic in this show or book.
Was it for me to say something?
Probably.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
Oh no, you were like Tony. You were like, do you ever use one of those ice things? Those computer blast cleaners, and it's so cold it burns your hand. I think your girl Mira Reed says something like that to Bran about like how. What does she say? She says something like, "You've never been burned by ice," or like some. I don't know. I've got zero filter. I apologize. Yeah.
You never been burned. I think I know what you're talking about. Wasn't it Alex Thorne who said that though?
Maybe.
You never felt a cold, like the cold, beyond the wall. You never felt ice, like the ice that you feel when you're about to die, something like that.
Something that burns, like, and that's what I say, like about when it's like on the East Coast, like it gets cold. It's not the cold, it's the wind. The wind wants to. It's like feels like knives, and they like bite you. And I just think about like I'm like if Jon Snow can handle it, I can, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Cammy has a question. Do dragons kill dragons? Well, I'm sure they could. I'm sure they
can. Who?
Anything. Do dragons kill dragons?
Yes.
They didn't dance dragons.
Yeah.
That's already been seen. They did in the dance with dragons many times. If you haven't read that, Cammy, it's on YouTube. The greens and the reds, or the greens and the blacks, or the Dance of Dragons.
I think it's the Princess and the Queen, like
Princess and the Queen.
Greens and the black.
3 books that are kind of precursors to this book that you can read on audiobook for free. They're about 3 hours a piece. And I encourage you to do that because you get a lot of backstory of whose relative is who and what kind of person they were, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt that a dragon could kill anything. I mean, I don't know anything that it couldn't kill. I mean, they showed in the show that they can kill White Walkers. The dragonfly can burn through the White Walkers easy. So, even though they're not the strongest, but they're very strong. They're not immortal beings. They can die, of course, but they are very powerful. It would take a lot.
I really hated that that Olympic javelin throwing Night King scene. It was so ridiculous.
He had luck on his side as well as everything else. It was like watching the Saints game Sunday. That shit still hurts my heart. I have to give myself a pep talk every day this week that I wake up. I swear to God. Y'all saw
I
that
gotta do
game?
that every day too.
Y'all saw that game, the Viking Saints?
I just do it because I got the shit I got to deal with every day.
No, I'm talking about y'all. You didn't see who saw the
No.
Viking Saints game? Anybody? Just because they watch football?
I'm not a football fan. I can't say I'm not.
It was rough, y'all. I mean, every day I get myself up, I find myself giving myself a little pep talk. Like, we're going to be okay. Our team going to be okay. We're going to get it next year. Y'all just come home safe. Dennis Wilson, we love you. He missed the final tackle, but, you know, you can't hate one player because of one play in one game. But, yeah, we lost in the last 10 seconds. If he just had tackled this dude, the time would have ran out. It would have been the end of the game. It still hurts. It still hurts. And it's Thursday.
Well, okay. Okay, she got a question here. Does anyone have a theory about why Gior joined the watch?
I
And
thought
that
it
is a
was
big win
because of
from the last play against Diggs.
I thought it was because of the fact that Jorah captured his poachers and sold them as slavers, and then because Eddard could never bring justice to him, that Jorah went to the wall instead of his, in place of his son, to not bring, to give some kind of honor back to their house.
I'm
all for that because
I think he went. I think he chose it because he was like he wanted to leave Bear Island to Jorah when Jorah was young enough to rule it in his prime, and then he brought all that shame with the poachers. But I think Jorah is still of that like old school where it's like honorable to go to the watch,
right?
I can't cite what chapter, what book, what line, but that's what I remember.
No, Jorah went on purpose to kind of give Jorah a chance to rule in his own right, and because to have more money, and he knew he had a greedy wife, and to try to have kids and make a go of being the Lord of Bear Island. Then he got caught selling him
Lioness for that poaching. He was like, that wife was never
good enough.
Bear Island.
As I said, why would you even think you could get a high tower made, and you're a Mormont from Bear Island?
I think this conspiracy's been in the works to get the science.
He wore her favor, Tony.
Yeah, but I mean, he's in a bad position and all that. I think that whole conspiracy's been in the works for years.
Man, Jorah was a love
opened up to be an intricate part of it.
Yeah, Jorah's a hopeless romantic, and I don't even know if it's that, because it kind of creeps me out in the books after how he lost after little 12-year-old Danny, like that. And how old is he? Like, he's in his 40s, right? At least in the books.
Yeah, late 40s.
Yeah, and then how he talks about how, like, the way the Danny Chester used to creep me out, because I got a daughter, and it's like she's 11, and I couldn't imagine some old dude, hairy dude, looking at my kid like that.
But let me say this.
I understand the times.
I know the times. I mean, the time, especially in their world, and I know that this is a paper thin excuse, but in that time she was a woman.
Right.
And in that, I mean, she was married. She had a husband, was pregnant. I mean, and in that time, her childhood was pretty much over with. And not that I excuse it, but you understand what I'm saying.
I understand.
It's not that she wasn't without a reaction. Didn't she get down with one of her handmaidens after he kissed her?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she just didn't want him. That's what.
Yeah, she didn't want that hairy beast. That's all.
It's not that
he woke something inside her. No, and like, to talk about age, lusting after little girls in power. I mean, look at your boy Barristan Selmy. Like, he's pretty into Danny too.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Let me talk about Bear. Thank you for bringing this up. I think
Anytime, girl.
Selmy. Yeah, I think Barristan Selmy is a gay man. I think he was in love with Rhaegar Targaryen. I think he was in love with him, and I think John Connington was in love with him too.
Oh, I definitely John Connington.
But yeah, John. I think the reason why he wasn't
Yeah,
worried
because
too much about getting married.
Connington does shit for Rhaegar when to do something different would have done him better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think.
I'm sorry, I'm a bad interrupter, Misha, as Tony pointed out, and Sarah. I'll try better.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, I think that what's his name?
Russell.
I think John Connington and Barristan Selmy are gay men, and I think they were both in love with Rhaegar Targaryen.
Barristan seems to say that he's in love with he's super in love with Ashara Dane, and like he sees Dany and Ashara, and like, or excuse me, he sees Ashara and Dany like the same way that Jorah was like, oh, Lyness look like you. But yeah, I mean, if you're from a super conservative family that doesn't allow people to be gay, like maybe you just, yeah.
I don't think Barristan was gay, Sarah. I don't think Barristan was gay.
But I'm sorry, but this is a controversial opinion, but like who joins an order where you're not allowed to have sex? Like,
not me.
You probably have issues with your sexuality, I would think. Like if you're gonna be a silent sister, or you're gonna join the wall, or you're gonna like by choice.
It could also be
the
people who had experienced sexual trauma, and never wanted to deal with it again. Like they saw that as a safe space.
There's hardly any of them that even follow that part of it. Like, you know, they're going to whorehouses and the wall and on the Kingsguard.
Yeah, that Dornish Kingsguard had a paramour, right?
Ares Oakhart?
No.
Lewis Martell. Lewin Martell, yeah.
Lewin, yeah.
Yeah, he had a boy or something, didn't he?
Well, because Quentin was like, or Quentin's boys were like, yo, Dany's sleeping around. And I think Barristan, in defending her, was like, your uncle was an honorable man and he kept a paramour, if memory serves.
All right, Cammy, what are you trying to say, baby? Cammy says, John and Danny's daughter's name. Oh, okay. Lyanna is going to be their daughter's name. I would think so as well.
Yeah.
If they have a girl.
Yeah. But as far as the Dornish, they can't really look down their nose at anybody for having, sexual relations with someone else. They are loose people.
100% conservative.
Arion.
His favorite character was Oberyn Martell, and one of his favorite lines was, girls, boys, some of each, whatever's the most attractive.
You can keep the spicy food, but give me the loose women.
Yeah, I mean, the Dornish, even though I understand their anger and their hatred of Dany, and I really think it was a mistake on Dany's part, to turn away from Quentin Martell and Dorne. I do believe that, but they can't really talk about anybody, having sex. I mean, those people are just loose. It's just in their culture. It's in their nature. Oberyn proved it. Arion proved it. I mean, all you gotta do is go back to that first Arion chapter. Well, not the first Arion, but that Ares Oakhart chapter, and see what she's up to. She's all about.
Remember, back then there were no kind of labels. Maybe it was snickered about, just like how Tywin snickered in Lady Olenna's face that Loras was a pillow biter. But other than that, it wasn't necessarily, it was just considered something, you got married and it was your job to deal with whatever your husband did as long as he kept it kind of respectable and under wraps. It wasn't the worst kept secret in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
But apparently everybody knew Renly was gay as well.
And nobody even cared. No one really cared.
It wasn't like it is today. And there's a certain group. I believe they say the Spartan military group. I'd have to go back on my history. We need Justin Thomas for this. There's a certain group, they say Alexander the Great's army, that they all slept together as the kind of way to bond, even.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I mean, it used, back with the Greeks and the Italians and the Greeks and the Italians, they weren't worried about sexuality back in the day. You know, they believed they didn't know anything about monogamy. They didn't know anything about homophobia or anything of that nature. I mean, it was all good with them. All good with the Italians, all good with the Greeks, all good with the French.
Me too.
You know,
and I'll tell you something about the French. They are more likely to integrate like other, like say when the French came over to Louisiana, they were more open to integrate, you know, Black people, mixed people, and Indians faster than any other race. They just don't have that, I don't know, the prejudice that a lot of other races have.
No, that's true. Yeah, Southern folks don't care. I mean, there are some Southerners that are fearful of other races,
but for the most part, Southerners have been around it their whole lives. They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care. Most Southerners don't care. Especially in the South. In the North, it may be a different matter, but
it's never been an issue with me and you. I know that. Has it?
No, not to me. I don't care.
Not to me either.
I don't care. We're talking about John and the book and the show. And are there any other points that anybody has that stood out in the chapter? Anybody? No.
Except to say that Sapphire's made a good point. What you guys do in your houses, we might not do in ours. Hey, that's true for everybody.
Yeah.
You work your whole life, you buy a house. You aside from victimizing children or holding captives or being a general psycho, you have the right to live up to your standards at your own house that you bought and paid for. In my opinion.
That's true. Yeah, you can do what you do what you want in your own house.
Now, we did just hear about those poor kids chained up in Colorado who weren't even all kids. That's sad and disgusting. That's not okay. But as far as that, what me and Russell believe here in this house, if we want to get out pentagrams, which we don't, we're totally Catholic and Christian, and dance a jig, that's our business.
There's one more thing I wanted to say about next week. We are doing Ed Art. Who's doing Ed Art next week? The overview. Do you want to do the overview, Tony? You haven't done one in a while.
You sure haven't. Or Sarah, you want this to be your first?
I was going to say a combination of Tony and Sarah will take the lead on Eddard.
That'll work.
Yeah, what she said.
That'll work.
I mean, nothing's written in stone, but I'm a huge Sansa fan. I always like to get the Sansa ones.
Okay, well, yeah, Sansa won't be there for a while, so. Next week, Eddard. What's the number? What's the number for Eddard? Eddard, the 20th chapter, 1.
We got Eddard, I think, and then Tyrion.
3. I think it's Eddard 3. Eddard 3. So Tony and Sarah will be doing Eddard 3. That'll be great.
Then we've got Tyrion.
Are there any more questions? Any more questions in the chat? Any more questions on the panel? If not, we're going to go ahead and end it. Oh, Ricky Hunt said, what chapter? Eddard 3. Eddard 3, A Game of Thrones.
And it's good to see you, Ricky. I see you around in other places. We're glad you found our little spot.
Any more questions on the panel? Oh, hey, Marie, what's up? Welcome.
Hey, Marie. Hey, girl.
Thank you for joining us, Marie.
I thought you was mad at me. I thought you didn't like my gifts.
Thank you, Chef Shayna Sapphires, for joining us, and have a good night, huh? I assume that there are no more questions, so we're gonna go ahead and end it for tonight. You all want to do your outros?
I have nothing to promote. Thank you for having me.
Okay, no problem. Tony, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Tony, thanks for having me again, as usual. I haven't been doing much lately because I've been doing the adult thing. So I haven't really been doing much, but I'll be here next week.
Okay, thank you
When
so
you
much.
weren't here last week, me and Misha joked. We said it is Friday night. He's got a life.
It ain't that kind of life, though.
Thank you so much, Tony, and thank you, Sarah, for joining us tonight.
Thank
and
you.
You're welcome back next week if you like. I'll send you an invite next week for the next chapter. Jennifer, you want to say your goodbyes to everyone?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lady Wolverton's Den at YouTube, though I haven't been doing any. We used to do the book thing on my channel, and it just got to be too much for me with surgery and physical therapy and whatnot. Misha gallantly took over. I'm happy to just be a part. Thank you so much, Tony and Sarah. Man, I'm glad I didn't miss this. I'm glad I popped up at 9:47 or whatever. And then it took me a minute to break into my computer because I had changed the code like 10 hours ago. And I swear to you, I had mine fart and I couldn't remember what it was. But I got it figured out and changed it again. Something I can remember better. And you can find me at Facebook under Jennifer Wolverton. And I'm also Jennifer Wolverton 1976 at Twitter. Love to talk to you about anything, or if you just want me to support something or support you, tweet me and I'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. She's a great motivator. I've noticed about Jennifer. She's a great promoter and a great motivator. So if you have something out there, shoot it at Jennifer and she'll promote it for you. Absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I'm Misha Houston. We'll be back next week on Thursday at 9:00 Central Time. We'll be doing EdR 3. Thank you all so much again for joining us. I'm Misha Houston. Come back to my channel anytime. And stay safe, everyone. Thank you all. Thank you all on my panel, and thank you for everyone in the chat. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. No problem at all.
Good to see you, Sarah.
Bye,
good
Jen.
night.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Let me stop.